Hey there, it's November 26th. This is just for the ICS4U students. So this is our little object-oriented programming beginning. You should have gone through the stuff in the Java thing, which will greatly help. So let's get started. So we're going to create a program, and this program is an ATM, automated teller machine. And the whole purpose of it is the user can access their bank account, they can deposit money, withdraw money, and see their balance. So it's really important when you're planning a program to lay out the requirements. So this is a write-up that I've put together just explaining what I want my program to do. Not looking for a big essay, I'm looking for very clear, it should be able to do this, this, and this. Now, the first thing is with object-oriented programming is to go through and figure out what the nouns are. So you've written out what your program does, and then you figure out what are the nouns. So I have highlighted the nouns in red: ATM, user, bank account, money, money, balance. So this is a list of those nouns, and the key thing is what are objects? So the objects are going to become the classes, and then which things would better be described as properties. So these would be properties of the object. So for example, the bank account would be an object. It's an object that I'm trying to represent, and the balance of the bank account is a property of the bank account. So you're looking for those relationships. The next part is going through the requirements and looking at the verbs. So I've put these in blue. So deposit, withdraw, see their balance. These are all the verbs, the actions. So now that I've got these together, this is my class diagram. So a UML class diagram, UML stands for Unified Modeling Language, and it's a way to plan things. And the goal with this is that you can create a plan without worrying about the logic or anything, but if you can set up the structure and plan ahead, it makes it much easier to develop the program. The other thing is that if you're working on a team, you can give each member of the team the plan, and they can be responsible for a certain section, and they can see how to spell everything so that it's accurate. So this is my bank account. I have my properties. I have an ID and a balance. And I didn't go over the ID, but basically I like to be able to uniquely identify everything. So I like having an ID that I can use. Then I've got my methods: deposit, withdraw, and view balance. So with the class, you can see I capitalize it. So bank account has a capital B. You'll notice that there's no spaces. I'm going to use this for a file. And I've created a new program. And in my program, I'm just going to show you how to add a new file. So if I just run this, you can see I click the Add File button. That creates a new file. I type bank account, which is what I'm using, .java. And it's as simple as that. Now that I've watched it a second time, let's move on. So in the bank account.java, I've written up my code. So public class bank account. So public, this is our access modifier that makes it available, accessible. Class, it's a class and bank account. And then I've got my squiggly braces, and in between them, that's where I'm going to start writing my code. So the first thing I look at are all the properties. So these are kind of the variables that belong to the bank account class. So I've got a plus sign. This indicates that they're public, the name of the variable, and then what type of data. And the way this is structured is it doesn't matter what programming language you're using. You can see what you want the variable to be named and what type of data it is. So the goal is to kind of use a language that it doesn't matter what the programmer is using, they can refer to this. So this is in Java, so I'm going to type it in Java. So public, the data type, which is int for ID, and the name of the variable. And so I've got one for ID and one for balance. And because balance is money, it's going to have decimal places. That's why I'm using the double. So third section, this is my methods. So each method, you have your access modifier, so the plus sign indicates public. You have the name of the method and then the brackets and what type of data type. Now, if these methods return a value, then I would have the return data type listed afterwards. So here is my code now. So I've added a method for the bank account, a method for the deposit, a method for the withdraw, and a method for the view balance. And you can see I've just structured them. I've got the squiggly braces at the end. I need to obviously add the rest of the code. Now, it's really important when you have a class, I did not include this in the UML class diagram, but you always should have a constructor, and the constructor has the same name. The other important thing is constructors do not return a value. So that's why we don't have a return. We don't have the word void there or anything. You can only do that if it's a constructor, so if the name matches. So I've got my bank account constructor, and what I want to do in there is that I want to set all my default values. So I've added some code here, so I've just set ID equals 0, balance equals 0. Obviously, I'm going to need to add a little bit more logic to this, but the goal is to build the program to begin with so that we can understand how object-oriented programming works. Then I'm going to create a deposit. So here's my deposit method. So I've added code, and the key thing is that my UML class diagram just tells me I need a deposit method. So I need to work out the logic that is going to happen. And basically, it's just going to be add the deposit amount to the balance. Obviously, you would add logic, make sure that they have actually submitted money, that kind of stuff, but we're keeping it pretty simple right now. So balance plus equals D, so that will increase balance by the value of the deposit, which is represented by the variable D. Withdrawal, very similar, but this time it's minus. And again, you want to make sure to put in some logic. You don't want them to be able to withdraw more than the balance, so you would probably have an if statement in there. And then view balance. So the view balance, I've just got your balance is, and then I output the balance. So this is really basic code in here. Going back to the main.java file, I've added some code to show it. So here I've created a bank account variable, so that's the data type. I'm creating one just with a small b, so that there's my variable. And that creates a new bank account. So that runs the code, which will set ID to 0. It will set balance to 0. So bank account.viewBalance, so this should be your balance is 0. Deposit, and I'm putting a number in here. View balance, so now I should see my balance is 99.99. Withdraw, 49.99. So that should subtract that. So if I run this code, it gives me exactly what I thought. There's my initial balance after I deposit my money and the withdraw. Now, here is where it's a little bit funky, because this should have been 99.99 subtract 49.99. Remember that we are dealing with double data types and computers are binary. So that's why I'm not getting quite what I want. So I should use a round function, so I'm always dealing with 2 decimal places when I'm outputting my data. So that's it. What I want you to do is take the time to create this program, make sure that you see how it works, and then I want you to create a new program. So I want you to create a car dealership. So I've written it out for you. Users can select a car. Each car is a certain type. So for example, it might be an SUV or a sports car. It has a color and a price. Cars can be driven forward, reverse, and they can be turned, and the user can check the location of the car. So I want you to take this information and start by creating a class diagram. So what are the nouns? What are the verbs? That will allow you to pick what everything is. So the class is simply going to be the car class, and you will have certain properties of the car. So your program, once you've got the UML class diagram, then write a program that does this. So It's just basic functionality right now. That's what we're focusing on. So can you create the class in your main method? Can you create an instance of the class and then be able to run the methods and access the different properties? So that's the goal. We're going to be delving into this quite a bit more in the next day or two, but that's our starting point.